Hello everyone, welcome to the Crystally Recap channel, and now you are going to hear a short retelling of the movie Gemma Bovery. Martin Joubert once lived in Paris and enjoyed the aesthetics of the old city with its luxury and sophistication. He adored art and literature and admired the works of the famous realist writer Gustave Flaubert. But 7 years ago, Martin returned to Normandy to take over his father's bakery. His bread is the main attraction of the small town. However, a new batch of baked goods turned out to be burnt, which surprised and outraged his wife Valerie. Martin says he is very worried about his neighbor Charlie and thinks he might commit suicide. After work, the man immediately goes to his neighbor's house and sees Charlie throwing his late wife's belongings into the fire. Martin manages to take the girl's diary before the fire destroys everything. It all started 6 months ago. While working in the garden, Martin noticed a car pull up next door. The new neighbors were a couple from England, Charlie and Gemma Bovery. Hearing the name, the baker looked at the girl with interest because she looked very much like the heroine of the novel of the same name. The very next day, the Boverys came to their neighbor's bakery. The girl was enthusiastically choosing bread, inhaling its aroma, and Martin could not take his eyes off her. Having met Gemma by chance while walking his dog, the baker finally realized that the young girl had awakened long-forgotten feelings in him. Late in the evening, Charlie knocked on the Joubert's door. The power went out in their house and he asked his neighbor for help. Martin agreed to help and gladly accepted the invitation to drink wine. The conversation was mostly between Martin and his wife Charlie, and the baker kept his eyes on Gemma. Lines from the book about how Madame Bovery was bored with living a quiet family life popped up in his head. That's exactly how the girl looked now. However, the piece was quickly interrupted by a mouse that ran right under Gemma's feet. The girl screamed and immediately started talking about buying poison, which frightened Martin, who claimed that poison often causes accidents. Now, Martin spent every day with his neighbor. He either watched her from the window of his house or waited impatiently for her to come to the bakery. One day, the baker even invited the girl to the kitchen to try baking bread herself. Martin watched Gemma, looking at every part of her body. During one of her visits to the store, Gemma meets a couple. They invite the girl and her husband to dinner and offer them a job. Gemma is an interior designer, and Charlie restores old things. Martin comes to this dinner with Valerie, continuing to observe the object of his fantasies. The hostess takes Gemma to a room she would like to repaint. She starts a conversation about exercise equipment and fitness, clearly hinting that Gemma needs to lose a few pounds, which really hurts the girl. A few days later, Martin meets Gemma in the park. He comments favorably on her figure, which puts her in an awkward position. She hurries home, but at that moment a bee flies under her dress and bites her in the back. The girl screams and asks for help. Martin unbuttoned her dress with trembling hands and catches the insect, which had managed to leave a sting. The man has no choice but to suck out the venom, to which the girl easily agrees. Hearing the screams, a young Frenchman, Hervé, who lives in a large mansion nearby, runs up to them. While Martin explains what is happening, Gemma faints. The men immediately take her to the hospital, where she gets better. The next day, a couple from England arrives in Bovery. While looking through a magazine, Gemma notices her ex-fiancé Patrick, who once cheated on her. The girl is always sad and angry because Charles is always immersed in books or doing something in the workshop, not paying attention to the ceiling and faulty wiring. A little later, Gemma goes to the market, where she is again noticed by Martin, who has come out on the porch of the store. He watches the girl, reading the lines of the novel to himself, occasionally adding something of his own. Suddenly, he sees Hervé approaching Bovery and striking up a light, casual conversation with her. The next meeting between the girl and the young man took place in a store near a wine display. The young man recommended the best drink and invited his new neighbor to visit his mansion, built several centuries ago. On the way home, Martin overtakes Gemma's car, but she doesn't notice him. Before reaching the turnoff to the house, the girl turns toward the mansion. Martin decides to follow her, but when he sees that she has entered the house, he does not dare to look in the window and simply drives away. In the evening, they plan to have dinner with the neighbors, and when Gemma sat down next to Martin, he noticed a clear imprint of passionate love left by the young Frenchman on her neck. From that day on, the baker began to watch his neighbor It was not difficult, because she boldly left the house in a dress and heels, hiding behind walks with her dog. But in reality, she spent her time making love to Hervé. And then they met again at the Bovery. Gemma bought bread and a croissant, but forgot it at the checkout. The baker is only too happy to visit his neighbor, but as he approaches the house, he hears passionate moans. Knowing that Charlie has gone to London, the man realizes who is visiting the girl. Unable to return the forgotten croissant, the man returns home and sits in the kitchen all night reflecting on his feelings. When Charlie returns, Gemma and Hervé's romance is still going on. The girl again goes for a long walk with the dog, and the man realizes that his marriage is most likely bursting at the seams. At Hervé's estate, the couple makes passionate love on the table. Gemma touches a porcelain statuette, and it falls, splitting into two pieces. The guy is seriously upset because this thing is very dear to his mother. The girl calms him down, takes the statuette with her, and asks her husband to restore it, keeping the customer's name a secret. Martin constantly thinks that he wants to break up Gemma and Hervé's relationship. The man does not deceive himself and does not try to hide behind morality or male solidarity. He openly admits that it is only his jealousy. On reflection, Martin decides to put an end to Gemma and Hervé's affair at any cost. The next day, Gemma takes letters out of her mailbox. One of them is supposedly from Hervé, who tells her that their relationship is over. Without hiding her feelings from her husband, she runs to the Frenchman's house, where he is listening to his mother's lectures. The woman is outraged, not only by the fact that her son is not preparing for his studies, but also by the absence of her favorite statuette. At the gate of the estate, Gemma receives a message from her boyfriend saying that he has to return to Paris and will not be able to go with her to London, where they plan to spend a few days. Upon returning home, Gemma wants to talk to her husband, but he guesses what it is about, so he packs his suitcase and leaves his unfaithful wife. The next day, Gemma meets Martin and asks him to help translate the letter. The baker looks at the young beauty again and cannot concentrate on the text. The silence is interrupted by a mouse that runs right over the girl. Martin kills the rodent and notices a bag of rat poison, which makes the baker angry, and he asks she not to keep the poison at home because it is very dangerous. Gemma spends her free time at her English neighbor's house doing repairs. There she encounters Patrick, who turns out to be a friend of their family. The man is definitely happy to see the girl and is probably determined to resume their relationship. The next day, Gemma made an appointment to meet Martin, but he never showed up. When the baker went outside, he noticed the girl in Patrick's arms. However, sitting in the restaurant, Gemma confesses to her ex-fiancé that it was a momentary weakness, and she is very sorry about it. When she arrives home, Gemma packs her bags, deciding to sell the house and return to London to resume her relationship with her husband. Then she finds the repaired statuette and leaves Charlie a tender voice message. Not far from the house, she sees Martin. She apologizes for not coming to the meeting and invites him to have a drink to say goodbye. During the conversation, it turns out that it was Martin who sent the letter on behalf of Hervé. The girl understands the motives that prompted her neighbor to take such a step, kisses him, and asks him to leave. After a while, Martin brings her a basket of freshly baked bread as a farewell. However, it is not Martin who knocks on the door, but Patrick, who has come with another attempt to start over. While working in the garden, Martin sees a taxi pull up to the neighbor's house and Charlie gets out. The baker is happy that everything will finally return to normal. But a few minutes later, Charlie runs out of the house screaming for help. It turns out that Gemma is dead. Martin is convinced that rat poison is to blame, but the detective claims that she died of suffocation, strangled with a piece of bread. The baker believes that he is to blame for what happened and tells Charlie about it at the funeral, but he blames himself because when he came home, he found Patrick and Gemma in a strange position and started a fight instead of helping his wife. Every man blames himself for what happened. Leaving the cemetery, Martin turns around and notices Hervé, who also came to honor the memory of his beloved girlfriend. 6 months later, new neighbors appeared, and they aroused Martin's interest. But that's a whole other story. This is the end of the movie. That's all for today. Subscribe and like if you want more videos like this.